Hi, glad you could join us. I'm Annette Scherman. This is Community. I love our Sarasota Herald Tribune, and I have been receiving it each morning ever since we arrived here, which is about 40 some odd years ago. And I love it particularly on Saturday. Now, why you think does she like it particularly on Saturday? Because there is a column in it's like the tabloid section. It's the magazine section. I think that they call it. I see a head nodding no, but it is in the Saturday Herald Tribune, and the column is written by Bob Parkinson, and Bob Parkinson is one of my special guests today. And I have an opportunity, or will have very shortly, an opportunity to find out more about Bob, more about his work, and we are gifted with not only having Bob as our guest, but we have the very lovely Eileen Parkinson as our second guest, and she has had a really fascinating career and is also very busy working frequently with her husband. And that presents all new, quote, problems, or not necessarily so. I know several couples here in Sarasota who work so beautifully together, and they've been married for many, many years. But that is another talent that we're not going to necessarily speak about too much today. Bob, Eileen, delighted that you could be with us. Let's start off. I know your marriage has been very, very productive, with two wonderful adult kids who don't live here in Sarasota. Where do they live, Eileen?
Well, our daughter lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our son lives outside Chicago.
Have they presented you with any little Parkinsons?
We have a granddaughter, yes, and we're about to have a great-grandchild.
Oh my goodness, I am so envious I could just cry. That's okay, I enjoy other people's grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The back of my office door, I have what I call my happiness wall, and it's pictures of all my friends' grandchildren and great-grandchildren and families, and it's wonderful, so that's really a blessing. Do they come here to see you, or do you get out there to see them very often, Bob?
Yes, the answer is the same for both, yes.
Okay.
They've come here, we've going there. We're going to be up there this holiday season coming because they're too busy working up in the Chicago area and Milwaukee also. But that also gives us a chance to put some clothes.
Did they follow in your footsteps and what you're doing? What is their profession?
Our daughter more than our son. She's a producer on a television station in Milwaukee. And she's doing television now, but she also has done radio for many, many years. So she's in the biz, as they say. Our son is more involved in educational activities.
Well, it's still in keeping with your background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I was thinking in terms of
Okay.
this medium right now.
Let's move on because there's so much that I want to talk about. Eileen, I'd like you to give us an understanding of what you've professionally done up to now.
Oh my, but I often say if you walk this earth long enough, you get to do a whole lot. But I'm a past president of Screen Actors Guild in Chicago. We spent many years in Chicago, and on the national board of SAG, as well as the television radio counterpart, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which are now merged. I'm an executive coach, help people communicate effectively.
I'm beginning to be sorry I asked her because this is going to take the entire program. She doesn't sit around and do nothing. She's a busy lady.
Certainly is.
Suffice to say, enormous number of activities and connections. And Bob, your background. You have a fabulous educational background. Tell a little bit quickly about your background.
The first job that I had after I got out of the military was I was a school teacher. And then I got good at that, so I became a principal. You know how that works. They move people around. And I was in public school work for a long time. Then I moved out of that and ultimately ended up on faculty at Northwestern University. I was a professor at Northwestern for many, many years. That was the end. That's the beginning and the end of the career. In between that, I worked for the governor in the state of Illinois. I was on the governor's staff. I did a lot of work with business organizations headquartered in Chicago. So the overall resume says three prongs: education, communication, business, and actually
That
the
sums
fourth
it up, doesn't
Yeah.
it, I think? Very briefly, how did the two of you meet? It seems that you're made for each other.
Well, I think we are. I agree with you. We are made for each other. Our families knew each other. We lived in the same town. And so it seems as if we have always known each other. And the thing is, I think we're somewhat surprised at this from time to time. We still like each other, even though we work
not
together and
surprised.
live together.
I'm not surprised, but it is a special, as I said earlier in the show, it's a special gift to work together and be able to still love each other. I don't mean that you start to hate each other, but you get into disagreements. Honey, I think you ought to do that this way. And no, honey, I don't think I ought to do that way. And it makes a little antagonism and a little discomfort, and before you know it, you're not talking to each other, that kind of thing. We have many couples in Sarasota, and they're favorite interviews of mine because I admire that tremendously, that you can work together, and you have worked together. You work together on the column. Did I mention the column is in the Saturday paper, and that I love the column? We're going to talk about some of those columns, and we've left time for it. Also, we collaborated on a
Yes.
book entitled Be As Good As You Think You Are. What a good title. Yeah, Be As Good As You Think You Are. Two wonderful pictures of the two authors, of Eileen and Robert Parkinson. This is available how?
On
Oh, it's
Amazon,
yeah.
Barnes & Noble, online, in the stores.
Okay, in the usual places to get books that you want, Barnes & Noble, online, wherever. How would you describe, each take a turn of a sentence or two, what this book is about?
This book is about how to present yourself in the best possible light in a variety of media, stand-up presentations and writing, as well as media environments
Right,
like
but
this too.
you've coached people. This is part of your.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there are too many people with your job description, and I know I'm reading through a ball player. I am not. I was familiar with reading it, and I can't find it. The refrigerator.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, what's his real name?
William Perry, he was the refrigerator, played football for
And he
Chicago
wanted
Bears.
you to coach him for what
Oh, yeah,
reason?
yeah. He was going to be on the David Letterman show, and this is a number of years ago, of course. And we knew that he was going to need some help, and so his agent contacted the organization that we were working with, and we put him through three different sessions on how to present images, how to present ideas. Step number one in many situations, interviews like that, the guest doesn't walk in knowing what he or she wants to say. They just wait to be asked. Well, we said, don't do that. There are some points that you want to make because we knew what Letterman was going to ask him. He was going to talk about overweight, but too fat, all kinds of things. So we provided the refrigerator with talking points. And the other point that was important in that interview was he, the refrigerator, like many people, say the language is filled with non-words.
Now the favorite is you know.
You know, sure, and he did that.
If
Okay.
you know, then I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, that's a filler. Well, we knew that he was going to do that because we saw that. So we gave him a couple of cues and a couple of clues, and it was interesting that the sports writers in the Clemson area where he went to school had a poll how many times he would say you know during the interview. I think the lowest number was like 37 or 38 or something. Actual count, there were 5. He didn't use them. Now, the interesting part of this story is at the end of the interview, it was off the air, but Letterman leaned across the table and he said to him, you got some help getting ready for this interview, didn't you? And William leaned back across the table and he said to him, if you were going to come on the field and play football with me, wouldn't you want to get some coaching before you did it? Boom, and of course, that's the whole thing.
Smart. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So many people don't get coaching. That's the major point, and that's what.
Yes, I think that you're very right, Bob. But I also think I know that statistically, speaking before a group is the most frightening
Yes.
behavior. This was tested and tested and tested. In other words, fill out this form, if you will, the most frightening thing, the this, the that, the other thing. And speaking before a group caused the most fear, and I can understand that because, first of all, they don't have Bob Parkinson to coach them or Eileen Parkinson to coach them. If they have to go on cold, it's frightening. This way, with a coach, it is okay, because you know what you shouldn't do, what you should do, and you've got a professional to tell you. So this is something that I think is a terrific field of endeavor, because there are so many people that have to speak publicly that are frightened and that are, well, you're going to say something.
And well, that's the reason that we did the book together. We realized that many people, although they want to be good at communicating their ideas, they don't have the time, nor often they don't have the resources to take a formalized program.
And they just don't have the natural instinct. I don't think, and I'm making a guess off the top of my head, that either one of you in your early years needed coaching. It just came as a natural talent. Am I correct on that or incorrect?
I'd like to put a shading on that. Nature has nothing to do with it as far as we're concerned, as far as the coaching that we're concerned. It's behavior, it's habit, it's patterns, it's the kinds of things that we do, and like playing a sport, back to William Perry, any sport. In order to play a sport well, you have to know what the skills are, what the behaviors are. And many people don't pay attention to that. They think they know how to talk. They think they know how to write. And most of the people that they work with just say to them, good job. Well, good job is really a put down. Because if you were going to hire somebody to work in your home to do some repair work, and you looked for a reference, and the reference that you called, when you said, how did Charlie do when he was here? And you said, man, he's good, pretty good. You probably wouldn't hire him.
I think this is something that people should do when they have, it depends on where they're speaking. Of course, if they're speaking just briefly somewhere and it's not terribly important. But if they're an important speaker at an event, they should, and they are uncomfortable about it, they should get help. Whether it's from the Parkinsons or whether it's from other professionals. But I think that relaxes them, makes them feel what they're doing is right and what they're doing is comfortable for them. And how wonderful is that?
Yeah, you have to know what to do. Tell the story about the man who was going to speak at his daughter's wedding.
Oh, we were contacted by this gentleman, excuse me. Have a frog in my, no, you'll have to tell.
I'll tell the story. Men contacted us, scared to death. He was going to have to speak at his daughter's wedding.
He's going to have to speak where?
At his daughter's wedding.
Oh, God.
Yeah. He was a retired businessman, very successful businessman.
Daughter or
exactly. He was scared to death. And he came to us and he said, can you help me? And we said, sure we can. And the first meeting, he said, what should I say? I said, I don't know. No, I don't know you. I don't know your daughter. Don't tell me about you. Well, what happened was, over a couple of sessions, we helped this man figure out what he wanted to say, because he knew his daughter so well and he knew the people so well. And we gave him the freedom and the flexibility and the license to talk about his daughter. And he was wonderful. Because
and the humor, and if he had the humor, not to be afraid of the humor sometimes.
Yeah, and it's not just humor, because sometimes people try to be funny, and they're not.
Yeah, it's true. But if they are funny and they have something funny to say, to test it and to find out if it is funny.
That's the big if.
Yeah,
yes.
It is a big if.
And in this situation with him, he was not a funny person. He was a very warm gentleman who loved his daughter, and he didn't want to embarrass her or anybody else in his family giving this very important speech after the wedding.
We don't, believe it or not, we just don't have a great deal of time. Would you believe about 12 minutes? Time flies when you're having fun, even when you're not, if you're talking to interesting people.
I'd like to say something, Annette, though.
I am going to ask you, we talked about be as good as you think you are. Who is this geared to? Who's this book for?
It is for everyone. Anyone who would like to be able to communicate their ideas. You mentioned that you would bet that it came naturally to us, and Bob gave our philosophy of that. Whenever we are communicating, it also requires some skill. and it requires some practice. And it's like riding a bicycle. Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, even though you've been away from it for a while, once you get back on, you remember how to do it. Well, communicating is exactly the same way. And within the book, it's not a how-to book. It's a what about book. And we offer many anecdotes about our experiences. For instance, this gentleman.
I'm going to stop you for 1 minute and ask my control room people, Damon and Joe, to please put the email address on the screen that they can get in touch with the Parkinsons. And while you're doing that, I'm going to interrupt you long enough because I don't want time to run out. You have marvelous credentials, Bob, and so have you, my dear Eileen. Eileen and Bob. Eileen, we're going to let you start. Just run down your credentials, where you've worked and what you've done.
Former broadcaster, worked with a public television station in Chicago, as well as was a news anchor here in Sarasota many years ago for ABC7. It was WWSB at that time over in the old station. I was there, and
so was I, but and you might have been on
I think our paths might have
time slot.
crossed.
That's all. I didn't see you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all of this work obviously did contribute to your knowledge and how to. When I see, I can't think of her name now, very pretty woman, their weather person now, the only woman that does the weather, whatever. And she's very, very attractive and very, very capable. The first time she got out, and they ought to run that just for the fun of it, she could not put two words together. She was so nervous, as we talked about when people speak, but you're speaking in front of a camera, it's even worse if you're not really, but now she's marvelous, and she's so congenial, and she's so lovely, and she's so perfect. But I'm glad, I have underlying thought to that they didn't say, out. They said, well, try it again, and I think you'll be better, and sure enough, she was, and she was wonderful. But I have a feeling that with your academic background, Bob, and you really have, each of you have wonderful backgrounds that prepared you for this kind of work or anything you wanted to do in the field of public speaking.
Sure. And it's a matter of acquiring and then practicing skills. What we do, see, most of us in any realm of business or any kind of occupation, we focus seemingly almost on just the content. Now, content is very important, but what we focus on in the work that we do is the content is a given, but how do we package and deliver that content? And that's what makes a good presenter, it makes a good writer, and it makes good partnership. You talked before about working together. One of the other things that we are working on right now reflects this belief that we have in the cooperation. It's another book with the working title is It Takes Work to Make It Work. You don't get along as a married couple or as a partner in business if you don't cooperate and if you don't work at it as a teamwork. Sometimes you're going to win an argument, sometimes you're going to lose an argument. But rather than looking at it as arguments, it's differences of opinion.
And rather than looking at it as winning or losing.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier, sometimes couples don't talk to each other. We don't do that.
I think there's something else there too, because there could be a competition. And I remember interviewing two young actors who just got married, and I said, well, what happens if he is offered a major contract in a movie and you're not? And they just were silent for a while. I guess that hadn't occurred to them. And then they said some glorious and lovely things that they would understand and so forth. And I, as they were saying it, I hoped to myself that is true. And if it does happen, that they do work it out that way.
It is give and take.
Sure.
And sometimes you give because that's what's important. That's what a relationship is about. It's about respecting the other person. And Bob and I, it's interesting. Sometimes we can have very dynamic conversations, shall we say, about his columns, or even when we were writing this book. But we always talked with each other, not at each other. Yes.
No, I think that's marvelous. So obviously you've done work and preparation in your lives, in your personal lives, to work together and to be a team rather than a competitive twosome. So that is beautiful, wonderful, and you should write your next book on how to be together.
Well, it takes work to make it work. That book will be coming out. It's in the developmental process right now, because it is a very simple formula. You listen to other people. Listen, listen, listen. And that's one of the things that makes our column work. And I say our because Eileen is the first editor of everything that I write.
But you see, Bob, you have very similar credentials. I don't mean similar in that they're same, but as equally as impressive. Okay.
Yeah.
So that this is not saying, oh, listen, I know what I'm saying. I got this degree and da-da-da, and you don't have a degree and da-da-da, so I'm going to say that, that kind of thing, which makes for anger, which makes for lack of cooperation. So it must be very wonderful to watch the two of you work because you respect each other's talent.
And that's the other
Go
key
ahead.
word,
Yeah,
respect. And in all the work that we do, we emphasize that. Respect the other people, respect your audience, respect the people that you're talking to, respect the concepts. Respect and listen go together.
Not an easy thing to do,
No,
Bob.
it's not. It's not. It's not. Life is not easy.
Well,
But if we work at it, it gets to be much more productive and much more acceptable.
It
There-
is, and
yeah.
if people believe that, genuinely believe that they're not losing something by giving respect to their spouse or to their partner,
Quite the opposite.
they're not losing it. They're gaining something. They're gaining a working partner that is most productive, and mainly productive because they're encouraged to be productive rather than put down and say, oh, that's not very good. We can't use that.
There's another key word here, and that is we like each other. We laugh and say, we've been married for umpteen years, and yes, we love each other, but what keeps us going.
That's such a good point, Eileen. And it's what I was married twice. My second husband, who passed away less than 2 years ago, we liked each other so much, and that's very important. It's, yes, you love each other, but sometimes liking each other is more important, or as important.
And again, you have to work at it. You have to listen to other people. That's the major factor. People ask me often, where do you come up with the ideas to write a column every week? And the answer is, I listen to what people are saying. And that's where the ideas come from. I don't dream up all of this stuff. Eileen doesn't dream up all of these things. But people around us are filled with ideas. The world is filled with ideas. All we have to do is capture them.
Believe it or not, we have about 4 minutes left, and that was a very fast program.
Yes.
I would like to talk to you guys for another 2 or 3 hours, and I'm sure there would be just valuable information. That interestingly enough, Bob, what you said just a few moments ago, is something we all probably know somewhere in our being, but it needs to be reminded to us. It needs to be frequently reminded to us about how important that respect is, how important that caring is, what someone that you care about thought or wants to contribute to the project
Absolutely.
you're working on. Well, you can get the book, and this is, I think, is something you'd want after listening to these people. Be as good as you think you are. You can go right over to Barnes & Noble or call
Amazon
It's on
online.
Amazon, yeah.
and get it that way. I'm sure if I know Bob, it's not expensive. He wants to make it. No. What I meant by that is you want people to be able to obtain it.
Yes.
But if you give it a very high price, they say, "Oh, I can't afford that."
Exactly.
Exactly.
But that's not what you want.
And it's a good working book because there's some ideas there. There's a lot of stories in there, things that we picked up over the years as we were teaching the program. So it'd be, as Annette mentioned, it's a what if. What if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? That's what the book is. It has a lot of
Get
great
it?
ideas.
I love it. Read it and let me know, or let the Parkinsons know, because they live right here in Sarasota. Okay, isn't that wonderful? The other thing is they have been invited to receive a very, very special honor. Eileen, tell us about that honor that you are going to be given in April. It was supposed to happen
It was supposed to
Before-
happen in October, but Irma,
Irma
did it in.
kicked you in the
Yes, so it will occur in April, and we are going to be honored as unsung heroes.
unsung heroes. Now, where do you
people of
go for that
distinction.
have to happen?
It's going to occur in St. Petersburg.
Okay, okay. And interesting application of honor, because in a way it's very clear that you are unsung heroes, because your name is the first people that people go to, because that's not the way you function. But you are there, and the Parkinson's are there, and it's not a disease. It is,
No.
in fact, a wonderful way to get rid of the kind of malady that so many people have, of the fear of speaking to a group, all these little and big fears that people typically have. These two can help you to get rid of, particularly if you have to be on a television show or a radio show or a public appearance or that kind of thing. You can get
Or
in touch
talk
with
at your
them.
daughter's wedding.
Beg pardon?
Or talk at your daughter's wedding.
Or talking at your daughter's wedding.
Or apply for a job, or apply for school. We worked with a young lady a couple of years ago who wanted to go to medical school. But one of the things that was in her way, she felt, was the interview. And we helped her navigate her way through her interview process so that she shone. She was so wonderful. She was a very bright young lady.
1 second, Bob. I got only a minute. Damon, put that number on the screen, please. And is an email address. There you go. Okay, so you can get it. It's an easy number. 346-0666.
Right.
Okay, 346-0666. And if you have a question, because if we had an audience, I'm sure there would be a lot of questions from the audience at this point. I don't mean we have a large viewership, but I mean an audience in the studio. If you have a question regarding anything that was said by the Parkinsons, get in touch with them. Well, if you call me, I'll give you their number if you didn't write it down. You're delightful. We can spend a few
Thank you.
hours, and it goes by so quickly.
Very easily.
It does.
But there's
Very
things that we
easily.
never could. I planned on talking about, but we're not going to have the time. We've just got 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye for now. See you next time.
The time really flew. We bid you adieu from community. If you want to know why we love it here, so check out Community. Well, it's a who's who, a what's, when, and where show. It's a mover and shakers who care a show. Meet your neighbors